Representative Sarah Fowler Arthur and Representative Adam Byrd. Thank you for coming on Message from the House.
Great to be with you.
Thank you for having us, Olivia.
And Representative Fowler Arthur, you pointed out we can see the house actually right behind us.
Beautiful day.
Beautiful day in Columbus, Ohio, to talk education. And I just want to kind of set the scene for folks that might not know your backgrounds as, you know, in the education sector. So I will start with you, Rep. Byrd, if you just want to talk me through your background.
Sure. I taught high school biology for 11 years. And then for the next 22 years, I was either an assistant principal, school superintendent. And so total of 33 years in education, and started back in the 80s. You remember the 80s, right?
No.
Vaguely. I think I burned my finger on the candle for my first birthday in the 80s.
Oh, wow. See, I can't lie on the record. So I don't remember the 80s, but I remember the early 2000s. Sorry, Rep. Byrd.
Very nice. Well, the 80s were a great time, and that's when I started my teaching career.
That is wonderful. I can't wait to ask some follow-ups to that. And Rep. Fowler Arthur, what about you?
Well, in the 80s, I was being invented.
There you go. I wasn't even at that point yet.
My grandparents were both public school teachers, so education was always a big focus in our family. And then, of course, my family homeschooled, and so it was always a part of growing up. And I had the opportunity to serve as an elected member of our state board of education for, I was elected 3 times and a total of 8 years prior to joining the House and getting the opportunity to continue serving here in the House Education Committee. I served under Rep. Byrd as one of our chairmen, and we have a lot of really great education-focused members in the House Education Committee. So it's been a really great experience. I love teaching. I taught piano for 5 years and kind of miss it now, although I'm getting a different taste with starting to home educate our 3 children that we fostered to adopt. And they are currently, I have 2 in 3rd grade and 1, actually he just graduated 2nd grade last week. So I guess I have 3 in 3rd grade at the moment.
Look at that.
It's a little wild.
I loved my 3rd grade teacher, Miss LaRue. She was big into music as well. My grandmother was on Broadway, so music was always a big part. So I did like my 3rd grade teacher because she was into music.
What's your favorite Broadway show?
So full disclosure, I've not seen Wicked on Broadway. I've just seen the movie, which seems like a disappointment. I'm gonna say Hansel and Gretel. We'll do a classic.
Yeah, Les Mis just came to Cincinnati.
Did it?
Absolutely.
Wow, I think Hamilton is coming here.
Hamilton's coming to Cincinnati soon.
Oh, is it? Okay. So some good ones.
The competition between Cincinnati and Columbus, it sounds like.
No, look at that. We can all share the wealth.
Very nice.
Traveling show. All right. So I do want to ask Rep. Fowler Arthur, you kind of, alluded to the work that you're continuing to do, whether it's your own kiddos or here at the State House, as chair of the House Education Committee, you're transitioning from kind of regulating to now implementing legislation. Walk us through what that shift means for you, the role that you get to serve in now and, the opportunities that you have.
Yeah, well, I'm really honored to have been chosen to be chair of education, especially coming after such prestigious colleagues as Rep. Byrd and Rep. Manning, Rep. Jones. We have a lot of very thoughtful former chairs still on the committee, but I'm excited to have the opportunity to bring into bear some of the things I learned being on State Board of Education. Also to start maybe seeing some of the opportunities that we might have to implement some of the flexibilities that we're hoping to get from the federal government. Spent a lot of time on assessment, a lot of time on trying to improve the flexibilities and the opportunities that districts have. And I know we've had a lot of good discussion so far in the House Committee about how we can roll back some of the red tape on traditional districts and incentivize innovation and better learning opportunities for all students across Ohio.
Absolutely. And as I was brainstorming questions, the topic of education is so robust, right? There are so many just different factions of, what you all get to tackle and help our districts with. And I want to feed right into the budget, right? Contrary to popular belief, the Ohio House has increased public school funding with this budget by 555.2 million over the coming 2 years. What message do you think this sends? About how the House feels about our educators, our teachers, and all those present in our education system.
I'll take a stab at that. I don't think anybody could have predicted the wild spikes in property valuation that have occurred in the last couple of years. And so when you look at the funding formula that the House passed, it stacks up on top of property valuation. And so when property valuation locally goes up, it artificially makes that community look like they have a lot of wealth, which means theoretically you don't get as much money from the state of Ohio. And that's not true. And so when the governor's proposal came out, it used the Patterson funding formula, and there were winners and losers in that formula, which there are always going to be that. But I think we've felt that it was especially unfair in light of property valuation issues. And so it was our intent to make sure, based on something that was totally unpredictable, to have winners and losers in education as far as funding goes. So we wanted to make sure that every school that was on the guarantee continued to be on the guarantee. We wanted to make sure that no school lost money. We wanted to make sure that we were recognizing school districts that were experiencing enrollment growth, so where there was an additional supplement if you had increasing population. And then on top of all of that, we decided to give every single school an additional $20 per student in year one and an additional $30 per child in year two. And so when you add all of that up, you get to a big number pretty quickly that you just said over $500 million of additional revenue for schools from the state of Ohio. And we were already spending somewhere around $10.5 billion. So we're creeping up around $11 billion that we're sending to schools. So certainly that would tell Ohio that we care about education, we care about kids, and we are not leaving anybody out to dry.
And if I could add to that, something that I'm very happy, we increased the teacher tax credit. That was something that we put into the budget. I think the first year I was in the General Assembly, I was really excited to carry a bill on that and have it included. And I think we almost doubled the amount of the tax credit that we're offering teachers for money that they're putting into the classroom, just to try to help them stretch their dollars that they do have a little bit further. And we recognize that while inflation has jumped up, state spending has actually increased about 54% over inflation in traditional public school, while our enrollment has declined about 19% in the same time period. So when we're looking at this bridge formula, which keeps all districts whole, make sure that the 342 districts that would have lost money under the phase-in proposal from the governor, that we are also looking at the fact that this is a bridge to somewhere. And I think personally this is a bridge to a conversation about how are we going to make sure that we're funding students going forward, educational innovations, opportunities, and looking at the changing educational environment.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue into how do you go about balancing the growing demand for school choice, right, with the needs of traditional public schools? I know that's a difficult balance to strike often.
Well, this bill also recognizes students who go to other educational choices.
Mm.
And so this bill includes for homeschooled parents, and instead of getting a $250 tax credit per family, you get a $250 tax credit per child. There's also there was a desire among our caucus to provide funding and educational savings accounts for the non-public, non-chartered schools. And so, we want to make sure that people have school choice. And the view of our caucus is that these people have paid tax dollars and they should be able to use their tax dollars to educate their child as they see fit.
Even with the Cup-Patterson plan, the goal stated in the plan was to start funding students, specifically to fund students. And I think we're taking a tiered approach. We're looking at tax credits, which some previously existed. We are adding to those. We are adding to the non-public options through the education savings account, as Rep. Byrd said. And we're looking at how do we make sure that districts, schools have funds for innovation, not just for a traditional experience, but that they have choices, that districts, we have a number of pilot projects in the budget for a lot of exciting things around career tech, around different types of education environments. And I think that we're looking at, if we fund the student, as was the original idea in the Cup-Patterson plan, that we also have the opportunity to fund innovation and new ways for new methodologies, innovative experiences, making sure that we're focused on the individual needs of each child and not just on one particular system.
This has definitely been a very robust budget process. I'm sure you both are excited to take a breath after it passes.
Yeah. So I think the message to Ohio is that this House of Representatives cares about education, and we are willing to fund it. And I think to Rep. Fowler Arthur's point, there's also recognition that the current funding formula isn't working, and that we're going to have to take a hard look at that in the future. And I suspect that will be a project for some of us in the upcoming months to start working and developing on a funding formula for the next go-round.
You mean you have to work past the budget? We have another year and a half after this?
I think this is such a divisive issue and such a difficult issue that if it was easy, we'd have done it already.
100%.
So it's going to take a while.
I also think that the process has been a lot different than my previous experience here, and it's been very good. It included more representatives in the conversation. It included a lot of stakeholders, and I think that it also gives us a little bit different platform to start from maybe than what previous legislators had or legislative bodies had, where maybe we can have a more collaborative discussion outside of just the budget cycle.
Yeah. Moving forward, Rep. Byrd, I want to talk about your bill that you recently introduced into the Education Committee to raise instructional hours for students. Talk me through why this was important to you to work on.
Yeah. In 2014, our predecessors changed the state law. It used to be that you had to be in school 180 days. You got 5 calamity days. And our predecessors decided to move to an hour system. And when they did that, they said 1,001 hours for 7 through 12, and they said 910 hours for grades K to 6. And so when you look at how long a school day is, if some schools are 6 hours long, some schools are 6 hours and 15 or 6 hours and 30 minutes. And so depending on the length of each individual school, that dropped the number of days that they had to be in session with students from 180. It dropped it down to anywhere from 160 to 168. And that's a dramatic decrease. And, when you look at the states around us, Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky, they all have instructional hours that are beyond what ours are. And if the bill that I've introduced were to pass and get signed into law, we'd still be less than these other states. And that's a problem. And so we've got work to do in this area. I think that time matters. Time and quality instructional time in front of a teacher makes a difference. And when I was giving sponsor testimony in committee, I pointed out some studies that show exactly what I'm saying. And I will continue to point that out to the committee members in hopes that they'll favorably see this bill out to the end.
And I would love to hear, what feedback are you getting from parents right now about this?
It's some good, Some don't like it as a
Interesting.
parent. And I that is surprising to me because I thought that almost every parent would be in favor of this because they would see that. And 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 I've had, some express concern about teacher union issues. And so, I'm not out to cause a problem for teacher unions. And, I'm okay with a clause in this bill or an amendment in this bill that says that we're not going to implement this until your current collective bargaining agreement expires. So, but I believe, and I think I've seen some of the media outlets in Ohio show that we have had a gradual decrease and erosion in instructional hours. And so when we went to 1,001 hours, schools said, oh, okay, if I don't have to be in school 180 days with students, then maybe I'll have additional professional days now, professional learning days for teachers. I'll have additional data days. I'll have additional days for preparing for some new curriculum. And so our kids aren't going to school 180 days anymore. They're gradually eroding and 170 or less.
Thank you for breaking that down. Rep. Fowler Arthur, I want to transition to standardized testing. It is a part of our education system, for better or for worse. And I want to ask, how do you approach reforming the system to make sure that it's holding schools accountable and being effective for our students and teachers?
Yeah, I think we touched on this a little bit earlier in talking about some of the flexibility that we're hoping to see come down from the federal government. Right now, we have a lot of test mandates that are federally based, and I'd love to see a norm referenced model for state and federal accountability measures. I think that districts are already using this. This is like your norm, your Iowa Test of Basic Skills, your NWEA maps, ACT, SAT, those types of assessments which provide achievement data, student growth data, competency data, which to Rep. Bird's point, as we discuss his bill, I think some of the conversations might come back to making sure that students have a competency level in the academic area that they're studying, right? We want kids to perform well in reading, in math, in writing, communication skills, because that is going to open the door for academic and personal success in so many other areas.
Full disclosure, I had a terrible ACT score. Horrible.
Doesn't matter.
Thank you.
You go on to move on and successfully in life. Everybody develops at a different rate. And I think we as a society place way too much emphasis on test scores. And you're a great example of that. If I could piggyback on what she said, the test that we often get, that is often used to compare us to other states and other countries, is called the NAEP test, stands for National Assessment of Educational Progress. And this is the one that people who like to criticize Ohio often use. Well, guess what? We don't teach to the standards that are in the NAEP test. We teach to the standards that are in the tests that we give in Ohio. And so the other issue about NAEP is that they randomly select schools in Ohio to take it, and that school randomly selects a third of their student population to take it. I had a superintendent call me the other day and said that their alternative school, where their students who are academically and behaviorally challenged, were randomly selected to take this test. Now, do you think that they're going to score well and represent Ohio well? Probably not. And so if we're going to use this test as the measure by which we compare Ohio's progress and success to other states and other nations, then maybe we should start teaching the standards that are in that test instead of the one that we're currently using.
That is very interesting. I mean, hey, I learned something new. I didn't even know that. I knew SAT and ACT. That's about it. I knew I had to go in and take it. And my brother is a lacrosse coach at one of the high schools in the state. And he had a couple kids, on JV say, hey, we can't come to the game. We have to take the ACT. So they had to cancel the JV game for that. So, all right, we want to transition to top priorities. I want to open up the floor. We talked about we do still have work to do. We still have time left in this General Assembly. Anything that you would like to highlight that you're working on or that the caucus or committee is working on to help boost our education in Ohio?
We talked a little bit earlier about cutting the red tape, reducing the bureaucracy, mostly focusing on ways that we can open up the flexibility for districts, for teachers to teach, and I would argue to restore the joy of learning. Like, learning is supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be boring or just cramming for a test. It's supposed to be fun and innovative and exciting. And it's a journey. It's a tool for it's learning tools that you're going to take with you on your journey and that are supposed to help you. But we've kind of turned it into a little bit more heavily focused on jumping through all the hoops, the state, the federal level, meeting minimum test requirements, which I think we have some general consensus around reevaluating at least which ones are important, which ones are helping, which ones are not. Maybe reducing some of the double, triple testing that we're doing. If we did adopt a norm referenced assessment option, I think that would allow us to potentially cut that down to one assessment for district, state, and federal accountability instead of 2, 3, 4 assessments in a given grade level. We've had a lot of discussion around different accountability measures. I don't know that we're going to reopen the report cards because that's a big conversation in of itself. But I think we're looking at, can we roll back some of the superfluous mandates so that people can focus on actually teaching and learning?
Absolutely. Rep Bird?
Rep Fowler Arthur and I have been here together for a while. We're both in our third term. And so since our first term together, we've talked about the challenges of our current tests that we're giving. And so here's another challenge that I present to you is the current assessment that we're giving to our students that is high stakes testing is given in April.
Mhm.
Okay. So I don't understand that, because why are we going to throw away 30 instructional days between middle of April and middle of May? I think that's a big mistake. And then why are we doing that when the test results don't come back until the following school year? So I cannot use the results of this test to adjust my instruction. I can't look at the test results and say, well, we did poor in this subsection, we did better in this other subsection, and so we will use that data to change the way we teach the next year. We don't have the opportunity in June and July to observe that because it doesn't come back until the next school has started. So that's really frustrating to teachers. And, if we're going to have to wait till next school year, can we at least give the test in May so that we can have instructional hours?
I jump in just to note that that's one of the reasons that districts are giving a norm reference test locally, because they can get the data back much more quickly and turn it around to impact instruction.
So I will give you a phraseology that is used by the practitioners in the field. There are tests that matter, and there are tests that don't matter. She just mentioned a test that matters to them. It's the ones that are formative assessments where I give limited questions. It's specific about the things that I've been teaching that week, and I get immediate feedback within seconds as to whether my teaching has been effective, whether I need to be reteaching certain concepts, whether I need to regroup my students so that this group, I'm going to regroup them so that this group gets specific instruction on this subsection, this group gets specific instruction on another subsection, and it's all based on this assessment that we got immediate feedback on. And then there are tests and assessments that don't matter. And these are the ones that the state deems are so important. And I don't know whether I did well or not. I don't find out until the next school year. By that time, everybody's moved on. It doesn't matter. That's not a very popular, politically correct thing to say. But people out there don't think that it matters because it's not useful to them.
And I think this just shows how passionate you both are about strengthening Ohio's education system. How can we prepare our kids in the best possible way to succeed in the state and beyond? And I think that was really important for folks to be able to hear firsthand from you all, who, plays such an important role in our education policy. And I guess I will conclude with, do you have a particular teacher as you are going through school or particular moment that you can think of in school that really sticks with you to this day?
I loved my piano teacher, to be honest. She was really great. I think that her encouragement, and we see this with so many teachers, that if they take a particular interest in a student and they are able to help them to succeed or unlock doors that they didn't know that they could maybe open, that it makes a life-changing difference.
I love that. What was your favorite song to play?
I don't know. I love a lot of hymns
Okay.
personally, but I always wanted to be able to play Entertainer from memory the way my dad could, and I never quite made it. So
Aw,
I had a little competition going with him.
I love that. Sometimes it helps light a fire, right? Family competition. I just had that with my March Madness bracket that did horrible. Shout out to Duke. Anyway, Rutfer, what about you?
You know, teachers matter, and I think everybody has somebody that they can refer to that made a difference in their life. I had a lot of teachers who made a difference in my life, but probably the number one was my dad.
Aw.
And my dad was was a teacher for me in high school. He was our high school varsity football coach, and so he coached varsity football in my town for almost 50 years. He's in the Ohio High School Football Coaches Association Hall of Fame. He played for the national champion Alabama Crimson Tide in the 1964 national championship. And so he was a guy that was my teacher, was my coach, tremendous man of faith, tremendous leader of his family. And now you're going to make me cry.
I was going to say, you had some big shoes to fill.
I know.
So absolutely. And so he is the one that made the most impact.
And I, can without a doubt wholeheartedly say that I know he's so proud, and just being able to watch your passion for education and, your passion for legislature or laws and policy.
Well, he might be listening when this is broadcast.
That's true. He probably will.
He's
Thank you for Representative Byrd, sir. He's a great asset to the
There you
Ohio
go.
GOP caucus.
he and my mom live in New Richmond, Ohio, still today,
Okay.
and so they're in their mid 80s. And
Oh my gosh.
I'm blessed to have my parents still with me, and my wife is blessed to have her two parents in their 80s still with us.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
I love that. So we have family rivalry with the piano. We have family playing an impact as our teachers. I will say this is so funny, and I will show this to her. My mother helped me with my math homework, and it was a picture that, versed on the equations. And my dad came home and had to erase the entire picture because all of the equations were wrong. So my dad then helped me with my math homework moving forward. But love you, Mom.
But it demonstrates how important parent engagement is in the learning process.
100%. You both were fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to go ahead and reiterate that you can follow us on social media at Ohio House GOP Caucus on Facebook, Ohio House_GOP on Instagram, and you can subscribe to YouTube or wherever you listen podcasts. Representative Byrd, Representative Fowler Arthur, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. It's an honor to be with you.